Welcome to Wisdom Journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Kunkwa. Today's guest is Marc Schmidt, broadcast professional and the creator and host of the podcast Mark My Words. Born with a cleft palate and lip, Mark turned personal adversity into purpose, and stories of resilience, imposter syndrome, mental health, and career pivots. We'll explore how he overcame lifelong obstacles and found his voice on camera and inspire others to believe in themselves.
Yeah. I saw your
Nice.
profile and I noticed you have a podcast called Mark My Words. Yeah.
Correct.
I'm kind of curious. How did you even come to that name?
It's kind of a long story. I'll make it short. Basically, I used to be a blogger and I met a lot of people within the blogging community. I had a completely different name. It was like something really like stupid. And I never really liked the name of my blog. I must have had a conversation about that somewhere along the line. And somebody said, a good name for your blog would have been Mark My Words. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. That's not something I would think of. I don't think I'm quite smart enough or, whatever to think of something quite that good. But I took the idea. I'd say, hey, can I take that idea? And they're like, of course. So, um, yeah, I used it for the podcast.
Yeah, what was the name before that, this name? Mark My Words. What was the previous name?
Well, this is the only name of my podcast. So when I had the blog, it was called Marky Mark's World, which I personally think that's kind of a lame name. I mean, it's just, I don't know, just my opinion, but it's not really like all that creative, I guess. So I think Mark My Words shows a little bit of creativity, which I didn't even think of it. So there you have that.
Yeah. Because when I like, it's one of those podcast names that once you see it's you like you while you're just scrolling, you're like, okay, he has a podcast, and then oh, Mark My Words, wow, that's nice, that's nice. This guy is genius. That was a really good one.
No, this guy is not a genius in that way. So, but I since then, so I just recently created a TikTok, and as you can see, I'm like huge on music and collecting vinyl and all that. So I was like, okay, let's learn our lesson. What can I call this that's really cool and punchy and catchy? And I was like, Mark on Music.
That is
So
exactly what
I
I was
came up with
thinking.
that one. Yeah. So I learned my lesson with Marky Mark's world or whatever. I'm like, that's like just not very good. So I feel like the secret to a good name, as you pointed out, is just something kind of catchy, Mark My Words, Mark on Music, Wisdom Journey, that's a great name. So, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
you just gotta be catchy, memorable.
yeah. How long have you been a content creator?
I'm gonna say pretty much since 2016, so about 9 years. So, not that you asked my story, but I'll give you the abbreviated story on how that happened.
I need a story. I
So,
need a
I
story.
worked
I need a
in,
story.
I worked in,
I need a story.
you need
Not the abbreviation.
Okay. You're there for the
Yeah.
story. So I worked in corporate America for 10 years. My company did like a reorganization. I think it was like the second one within like a couple of years. And I decided to take the buyout package that they offered me. It was a very good package. Like, I think it was like 9 months of full pay and benefits. So I was kind of itchy to get out there and experience something else. So I took the package. I started like doing freelancing. I was in like the Washington, D.C. area at the time. I started freelancing and before I left my company, I was like kind of in lower to mid management, not by any means like high management or anything. Just I had just gotten promoted a few years before, and you know, it was very fulfilling to work with a staff and to have that kind of relationship and impact on people. And I went from that and went back to doing more like, just regular work. Like I work in television. I do a lot of like quality control on like TV shows and, ads and stuff like that. And it's cool work. Don't get me wrong. It's like really awesome, interesting work. But I went from being like a manager, which for me was very like fulfilling, back to like just sitting in a quiet room doing, very solitaire work. And it's cool, but I found myself not feeling as fulfilled. So that's when I got the idea of, I've been trying to work for somebody else's dream and work up the ladder for a long time. That's always been my mindset. The world is changing. Why don't I take a new perspective and try to like do something for me? So that's when I started making content as like a blogger, and I was doing some freelance writing. And then like a year or two later, I went to something called LinkedIn Local, which is just like a networking get together that they have them all over, at least the US. I think they have them outside the US too, but you can go and meet people within your area and just network, and you can listen to somebody talk about whatever topic. And there was somebody there who the first one I went to, they were talking about creating content and like video content. And at the time, I was like, oh, who's gonna like want to listen to me or watch me? Because I had spent my whole life kind of like with that performer inside of me, but because I was born with some issues and obstacles, and you have people telling you that this, that, and the other thing, like you don't fit in, you don't have the right look, you sound weird, whatever. One of the things, like I was born with a syndrome, but it's like cleft lip and palate is like the thing that you see. And I was just like, I'm not going to put myself on camera or put myself out there because people are going to just judge and dismiss me. But through that experience, people were encouraging me to make content. They were like, hey, you should go on LinkedIn and post a video. So I did that, and I was getting like support and positive responses. And I'm like, this feels really good. So I kept trying to grow and build on that. And I kept going to the networking events, and people were encouraging me more and more about, hey, have you ever thought about making a podcast? And I said, as a matter of fact, I haven't. And I took the feedback seriously, and one thing led to another. I decided to dedicate my show to the people who were influencing me, which were a lot of them were entrepreneurs. And Mark My Words was born. And here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. Did anyone try to talk you out of chasing this dream, this career? And if so, how did you respond?
Well, as far as chasing like my podcasting, nobody has stepped in and said, well, you suck, you shouldn't do this. Like, I think everybody that I've talked to about it, and even to this day, I'll talk about it or I'll say, hey, I'm gonna go live with this on TikTok or whatever. People are always super duper supportive. I think the only people who were not supportive of what I wanted to do with my life, like at least what I do as a day job and all that, was actually my family. And I'm sure if they heard this episode, and I'm assuming we are actually recording the episode here, but yeah, I figured as much. We just kind of jumped into it. But yeah, I'm sure if they heard this episode, they would say, well, that's not true. No, it's actually pretty darn true. So I don't know if they even know I'm a podcaster, or they probably don't know what the heck I'm doing really, but they were not always like the most supportive. I know they would disagree with that, but um my 15 years of not talking to them says otherwise.
Okay. One of the things I noticed when earlier on, before I even asked this very question, is there was someone that kind of tried to talk you out of you starting the podcast and creating content and putting yourself out there, and you forgot about that person. And so I'm going to remind you, because you mentioned the person in the course of you telling your story, and that was you. You rejected yourself. You're like, oh, nobody's going to listen to me. You don't have anything interesting to say. And this is not just peculiar to you; it's peculiar to a lot of persons. I'm like, oh, I don't speak well. People are not going to. What do I have to say? My words are not so profound or something like that. And the strange thing is that we will always be with ourselves, right? Other persons, we can like cut ourselves away from them and say, oh, I'm not going to talk to them. I'm going to separate myself. But we'll always be with ourselves. And I'm glad that you had other people that believed in you and said otherwise.
Yeah, I have had a life where I've had to learn to be very resourceful, and I've had to learn to believe in myself. And even when I reflect, it's funny, whenever I talk about it or I guest on a show, it kind of reminds me when I actually talk about it that I didn't just necessarily do everything on my own. It feels like I did it all on my own, especially when I internalize it. But when I tell my story, I'm like, wait a minute, going back to like first grade. So even back then, I learned very, very early that people were being like kind of cold and mean towards me, and just, it wasn't always like in my face, but it was a lot of it was in like actions and not including and whatnot. And there was one time I went to a private Catholic school where I grew up, and we every week, every grade was like in charge, quote unquote, of running the mass and just speaking and all that. They didn't literally run the mass, but you know what I mean.
Right.
They were like, a an active like participant in it would be a good way to really put that. And there was a point, like, I guess I was picked to speak or say something, like a few lines or a paragraph, and there were some people in the school who were kind of like against it, because they were like, well, nobody's going to be able to understand him, and why this, why that. And my mom, who, she had to really, I'll tell you, even though I don't talk to my family, my mom, I'm probably a big reflection of how my mom raised me. And, she always had my back, especially in the formative early years. And I know she had my back when it came to that incident. And I wound up doing it. And afterwards, everybody's like, hey, wow, you did a great job. How about that? And it's stuff like that when you prove to people that, not to necessarily throw it in their face, but you prove them wrong. You prove that, something, I do have some worth. I have something to offer. And I learned early on just little things like that, getting that support. It builds up that confidence, and it at least, even if like 75-80% of what you're experiencing is negative, and they're putting all that imposter syndrome and limiting belief in your mind, you do know that you have what it takes to be, to be something, to achieve your dreams. And that kind of stuff always stuck with me. And I used that to help me to just keep growing as a person and to not give up. And just the fact that, there's something about being me that people, when they don't believe in me, I'm just like, wait a minute. No, I know myself. I know what my potential is. I know that you're wrong about me. And let me show you. I want to prove that. And that's what drives me. That's what keeps me going every day.
The strange thing is that oftentimes we think we're proving to people, but we're actually building evidence for ourselves to prove to ourselves that we're capable, so that in the future you're like, oh yeah, it's true. In the last year when they said I couldn't do it, I did it. So that you're like, oh yeah, I can do it. I've done it before in the past. I can do it. You get it? So it's more about we're proving to ourselves, especially in the young age when a lot of persons will probably were being bullied and all that. If we're not careful, those their voice is kind of internalized into our system, such that when we grow old, when we want to do things, we start hearing those voices. Oh, you're not good enough. You can't do this, and it seems like it's our thought, but it's not us. It's just like people, all the voices of different people that have said we can't do it. They've internalized into our head, and so we start hearing those voices play out in our head. That oh, people are going to laugh at me. People are going to say that I suck. I'm terrible at it. And yeah, I mean, sometimes we just have to like get to see someone else to say otherwise that actually believes in us, and then we're like, okay, yeah, 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 yeah. You've been doing the podcast,
I totally,
yeah, yeah,
I totally agree with
yeah.
you.
You've been doing the podcast for five.
Sorry, I
No, no, you've been doing the podcast for 5 years now. And what's like the number one lesson you've learned since you launched Mark My Words?
Oh my gosh, that is an interesting question. The number one lesson that I think that I have learned, and I've learned a lot of lessons, so I could take up however much time we're going to talk about that. But I think maybe the number one lesson that I have learned is possibly to not give up on yourself. If you really want to do something, you have to adjust on the bad days. You got to be able to dust yourself off and keep on going because is podcasting is a ton of fun. It's a great way to meet people like you and so many of the other people I've met, and you can learn a lot not only about them or the topic that they specialize in, but you learn a lot about yourself. And however, there are going to be times, and there have been times, where I've had episodes that I've had to scrap for one reason or another because it just wasn't the right vibe, or they didn't have the right attitude, or I know there was one episode I did where they kind of like misled me, like in their role with a company they worked for, and they it kind of got messy because like the real entrepreneur of the company was like watching and listening to the episode that we did, and they were like, what the heck? And I'm pretty diligent with checking with everybody before we do an episode. I make sure I know what I'm getting into and what they're getting into. And you definitely have to be very diligent and watch yourself and make sure that you don't make that kind of mistake. And I'm guilty of being very like open-minded. So I took this idea, even though the person I was talking to wasn't the entrepreneur. They certainly made it seem like they more or less ran everything. And once that episode like kind of got back to them, they were just like, what the heck? So I always try, and it's not even so much what I learned from that incident, because that was like my mistake of just maybe being a little too open minded about everything.
Yeah.
But I think what I learned, because, it's a reflection of me, like I viewed it as a failure that all of that happened. And I have had a couple times where I've kind of questioned whether I should continue. And long story short, is that when something comes up that makes you feel bad, because doing something like this can be a real high and it can make you feel really good, especially when things go really well, which they usually do. But when it doesn't go quite the way you want, or when you have an incident like the one I just told you about, it can make you doubt yourself, and it can make you feel like, why am I doing this? I should quit. I should give up. And if you really feel in your heart that you want to do this and that you're capable of learning and growing and getting better and, dusting yourself off from it, then you got to keep going, and you can't let it stop you from accomplishing your goals and your dreams.
Yeah.
So, long story short.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a podcast host and a podcast producer.
Correct.
When you started 5 years ago, um, did you, did you have the skills at that time, or it was over the course of 5 years that kind of honed the skills and learned the intricacies of podcast?
Even with my background in television, I went to college, I took all the production classes and stuff. So that kind of gave me an edge, but I mean, I had to learn right from the get-go, like, what do you need to even do a show? So I had to do that research, and then it's like, as you go, like, I didn't have an intro or an outro for the first season of it, so it's like, you get to a point where you're, as the person representing and running the show, you're like, okay, how do I do that? Like, how do I even go about that? And, it's just, you learn as you go. You get, at least for me, when I say you, I'm saying me, you get ideas and you give them a test offline, online, and you implement them. And basically, to your point and your question, just, I learned as I went, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah. I want us to go into the podcast in itself. So the first question I'll ask now is, how do you come up with episode ideas that
So you and I are members of
yeah,
Podmatch. That's how we found each other
yeah,
in the first place. So, basically, since my niche is speaking to entrepreneurs about their journey, and I don't know if you're looking for just the niche in general or episode to episode, but episode to episode, so I get a lot of inquiries, and I only have so many hours in my life to do the
yeah,
episodes. So unfortunately, I kind of can't take everybody, but I think the key for me is to just find somebody who is doing something or has a story that just really sticks out, because I don't want to have too many people who have had like a similar journey or have like do the same kind of work. I try to make sure that I bring people on that are doing something a little bit different, just something that I personally find interesting, that I want to learn more about. And if I could, I would probably have just about everybody on my show, but it's just not possible. So I try to narrow it down, and whatever I get in my inbox, and if it speaks to me, if my intuition is going a little bit on overdrive with it and saying you should do this, then I go for it.
well, just out of the how often do you publish episodes on your?
Currently, mostly only publish once a week, and that's something I'm actually looking into, because I'm actually kind of hoping to go live and maybe do a lot more episodes as a result of that. And I could, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but I sometimes do solo episodes, which I need to pick up on. I'm kind of hoping to maybe go to a twice a week schedule. Maybe one is a solo and one is with guests, but currently just once a week to answer your question.
Yeah. Earlier on, we did talk about some. You shared some stories of when you were a child, when people kind of like said that you couldn't do something, when they kind of wrote you off. And I'm curious. I just want us to double down a bit on that. And so the question is, how do you push through self-doubt when it creeps in? I think that's like the most important thing. When you doubt yourself, how do you push?
That I don't really know. I think the best way that I push forward when I'm doubting myself, I just do it anyway. I mean, I think I don't even really know how I can elaborate on that. I mean, I have doubts about myself still all the time. I mean, it's just kind of a part of who I am. So I think that's why I am big on speaking about imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs and trying to get people to believe in themselves more because I was not really given all of the tools that everybody else has. So it's like, maybe that's not the right way to look at that, but that's the way I do. And I see so many people out there who have so much potential and they're writing themselves off. And the fact that I see myself doing things like this, running a
Yeah.
show, going on TikTok and having no fear, I think when I see them and I'm telling them my story, I think that almost kind of helps to push me forward. Otherwise, honestly, I have no idea how. I guess I'm a little bit crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the other phase of that question would be, you have what do you call it now? Is it cleft lip and palate, right? And
Right.
I know that you get a lot of criticism, you get a lot of backbiters and a lot of hate comments. How do you handle some criticism, especially about your voice? Or
So I don't really hear a whole lot about it, like in my face or maybe like as a result of my podcast. But I go live on TikTok pretty frequently. And let me tell you, there are, as a lot of us call them, trolls and spam people who love to come through. It's not just me, it's like everybody's live and they will look at you and they will try to pick you apart like ruthlessly. They will be so direct. And I have had people, I kid you not. So I have a pretty nice looking beard, but obviously right in the middle in the filtrum,
yeah,
I don't really have much of a beard. And there will be people who will come to my live sometimes and they'll just be like, what happened, man? Like, bro. And they'll like be all talking to me on that level, to try to, like, they try to rattle you, they try to
yeah,
upset you and distract you. And that's pretty brazen. That's like very like straightforward,
yeah.
even though it's like on the internet, it's on TikTok. And really, the way that I handle it is I will either talk to them straight up about it, or I will just like make a joke about it.
Yeah,
And, I try to be educational first to just be like, well, this is why. And, oh, yes, as a matter of fact, you're right. And, yeah, there's some people that there was like one person not too long ago, they'll just keep egging you on and they'll be like, but you can grow that hair back. You can do it. You can do anything you set your mind to. And just like talking to you like that. And it's funny. Like, I have a good sense of humor. So it's like, I find it very
yeah,
funny. And I think you just develop a lot of thick skin over the years. Like, there isn't much that I haven't heard or experienced. As far as I'm concerned, I'm like, just bring it on, be straight with you. Otherwise, if that's not good enough, then I just keep on moving on because this is who I am, you know?
Yeah. It's important because like I wanted us to start off with the mindset and perceptions and all that because most of the things it's important. Mindset is one of the major key players it comes to when the things we do and all that. I want us to move now to podcasting. You've been doing podcasting for 5 years now. What would you say is like the growth tactic that kind of worked unexpectedly well for?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I'm actually not sure. That's not really a good answer.
Okay, let me rephrase the question so that it's easier for you to answer it. What's like the major method or way you promote
The mental
the
way
major
I'm
method or way you promote say how
promote my podcast. Right now it's really like LinkedIn, Instagram. I could that's probably in addition to getting my ears cleaned, that's probably something that I should do a little bit better is promote. And I think some of like promoting is just that there's just so much going on and not enough time. But I know going on TikTok and talking about it like I do, actually broadcasting the lives or not the well broadcasting live on TikTok while I'm recording is something that I do with the guest discretion of course and just stuff like that. Like I know I have an episode that I really want to promote this week that just came out really great guest that I had that yeah, I really want to promote that because it was like with a blind entrepreneur, which is very unique. So there has to be something going on that's unique and otherwise like I probably should that's probably an area that I could be doing a little bit better. I'm a little bit inconsistent and I don't even know how much the promotion really helps or not, or maybe I'm not, maybe I need to hire somebody. That's also something I've thought about, but that is probably the best way that I can answer that question.
yeah. I'm curious, how do you monetize?
Right now, Podmatch is a way that I'm kind of like monetizing through their tools. Just with their system and everything. Um, Otherwise, I'm still so I've been very protective of my show and not really just monetizing off of anything. And if I can just say that it is worth it to take your time and wait for opportunities that speak to you. Because I just put my show into a podcast network after having it for 5 years. I had other offers to do that, and I turned them down because it didn't really feel right. And as far as like other monetization opportunities, I've had things thrown at me. I've had things that I've tried to do, and it either didn't work out or it didn't speak to me. So I'm trying to be patient and just look for those opportunities that feel right. I think you gotta do what feels right, and hopefully the monetization will come. And it's something that I'm still kind of building on and working on as well.
Yeah. Is there I just also your podcast producer? Okay, okay. I have a lot of questions on that aspect, but um, on your podcast, and you mentioned that you joined a podcast network. What's the
The podcast network is actually Podmatch's network.
oh
So it's the Podmatch Podcast Network.
um if And what are some of the projections you have?
Projections. So I think at this point the projection that I have is to just keep doing what I'm doing and keep growing and I'm really at this point. So I feel like this has been a good year of growth
Yeah.
with me joining
Podwatch.
the network and I added my show to it's been on YouTube the whole time, but I figured out or didn't really figure it out. I learned that I can be like a verified podcaster. So I've added the audio versions of the show to YouTube through like the verified podcast. So it's basically just continuing to grow and a lot of what we talked about earlier
Yeah.
as far as just finding new ways to make it better and grow. And I think my projection is to just keep doing what I'm doing and keep growing and just keep trying to figure out how I can grow and just continue to, do what I'm doing and up my game. Like, I think some of it is like, how do I up my game? Not just grow and do the status quo, but what else do I need to do? Like, what energy do I need to put in order to actually monetize more and do things like that? Because I don't want to be doing this in 20 years and be like, well, I made $5 this year. And, that's, fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be, it's okay that that's kind of the way it's been because I'm a busy person. I got a lot going on, but eventually I gotta put my foot on the gas and actually try to really grow and take some risk. And I'm very protective and cautious, but you gotta take some risks sometimes and you gotta take some chances. So that's kind of what I project is just keep doing what I'm doing with the show. I think the show is good. I have some ideas of other things I can do, shorter content. Everybody loves like the short content nowadays, so I have some ideas for that. And well, hopefully we'll just keep growing.
Yeah, Mark, I want us to do something really exciting. I want us to just do something quite different. I want us to do rapid fire questions, right? I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to answer it in 30 to 40, 45 seconds, rapid fire. And we're going to run through a list of questions.
Okay, hopefully you're cutting out a little bit at the moment, but hopefully we can do that.
Yeah. But you got the explanation. I also do rapid fire questions. So I ask you some questions and you answer them quickly, and we'll go through a list of questions.
All right, let's let her roll.
Okay, what's the worst job you ever had before?
Arby's is the first thing that comes to mind. Long story.
Okay, what's the most embarrassing?
What's the most embarrassing moment?
On air.
On air? Oh my gosh. I honestly, I don't think that I have had one. So that's very egotistic, but I'm gonna say like I don't have one.
Okay. What's your go-to productivity hack?
Productivity hack? I mean, maybe like a 5-minute nap. I usually feel energized after a little nap.
Okay.
So maybe hope.
Yeah. Okay. What's a book or podcast that changed?
Oh my gosh. So Ryan Holtz is a podcaster that kind of changed my perspective and kind of helped me to at least kind of get myself up and going. Like he didn't directly do it, but I talked to him a little bit and he at least kind of gave me good suggestions on like a ring light and the basics of getting started, so I'll say him.
Yeah. If you could interview someone dead or alive.
Oh my gosh. This is supposed to be rapid fire. I'm letting you down here. Oh my gosh. I'm just gonna there's a lot of people who come to mind. I'm gonna say John Lennon.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yes, from
okay.
the Beatles.
Okay. Okay. What's one thing new podcast?
Doubting themselves.
Okay. 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 And this one is it's gonna be a bit long, but how do you stay consistent when life gets chaotic now?
How do I stay
How do you stay
consistent?
consistent when life gets
When as far as like just keeping episodes going and whatnot, um, that's a good question, and I can see why you said this is a longer answer. I think just stay organized. Stay organized and keep your calendar straight. Keep everything in your life just organized. Know your schedule. Stay on schedule and understand that you need to budget your time for everything. Like, my day today, for example, I knew I had to get to the office. I knew I had to get home. I knew I needed to rest before doing this because it's the end of my week and I was tired. So I budgeted for that. I won't, since this is rapid fire but more
yeah,
detailed, I
yeah.
won't do too much detail.
Yeah.
But
Uh okay.
that's my answer.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Okay, that's like the end of the rapid fire. Just quickly,
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a couple of emotional questions, not so emotional, but yeah. And then we'll round up the episode. Just a couple about not so many. Okay. When did you first feel I made it in podcasting? When did you feel like I have made it in podcasting?
When I felt like I made it, I'm gonna say, and this is a
Yeah,
guess
like
that
when
you've
you
had on
first
your
felt like
show. It took, I think, and I've had a lot of good episodes and successes, but when I had two moments when I had John Hewitt on my show, and then when I had Matthew Lesko on my show. Those are two people who people know, and they, they're not just people that I can, they're not easily
yeah,
accessible to have on your show. So when I had those two, and they were like such wonderful, amazing guests, that's when I was like, wow, okay, I feel like I did something. I feel like I'm going somewhere. And yeah, those were like two moments pretty evenly where I felt that way.
yeah. What's something you still scared to?
Still scared to share publicly. I'm gonna say, I mean, that's kind of an interesting question because if I'm scared to share it publicly, I'll tell you something though that I do kind of share. Like I'm getting a little more open about it, but with the syndrome I was born with, there were a couple of things that I got with it, like the cleft lip and palate, and some other things. The one thing that I got is, and I can't believe I'm even saying this, but I was born with an perforated anus, which means that you're born with no opening to like
Yeah,
do your daily dump,
yeah.
I guess. And like when I was born, they had to do a
Surgery.
surgery to open that up. That's a common thing that so I was born with Opus GBBB syndrome. It's like really rare. And that's like I call it a package deal. And that's one of the things I was lucky enough to be born with, and which is fine. Like, they saved my life. They opened that opening up that we're supposed to have, but I have to like watch my diet, and I can pretty much eat whatever, but I gotta be careful because it can cause me a lot of issues even to this day. So I handle it very well. But boy, if you really wanted to answer on something you're scared to open up about,
Yeah.
you got yourself a good one
Yeah.
here.
I guess
I don't use,
you,
I don't,
it's,
right. I don't open up about it too much. I'm pretty selective on it, but yeah,
thank you.
it's one thing I really think about. Yeah.
Thank you for trusting us, the listeners, and me. I'm almost about to say this is a safe space. But now that you've opened up about it, I mean, it's no longer going to be something you're scared about because you've shared.
Yeah, it's definitely it's so if I went to school with you, I never opened up
Yeah,
about it. And if I worked with you, I've never opened up about it. I only ever really opened up about it like as mostly as a podcast host. I don't usually open up about it as a guest, but that's a very good question. And it takes a lot of bravery on my part and yours to ask and answer it, I think.
yeah.
Especially in this case.
Okay. What's a personal sacrifice you've made for your career?
Personal sacrifice. Time, you know? Right now, I could just be sitting in the living room watching TV or playing video games and could just be like goofing off or whatever. I live in Florida. It's so beautiful here. I
Yeah,
could be out on the beach or whatever. And I'm kind of like giving up all that time, could be doing other fun things, could be focusing on uh, building myself up and building up my business and career. And that's kind of what I think most of us sacrifice when we say, you know what, I'm going to start a business or I'm going to start a podcast. It's not, if you really want to be successful or go anywhere with it, you can't just every once in a while hit record and talk about whatever. Like, you gotta take it seriously.
yeah,
It's fun, but you gotta take it serious. And that's the kind of thing you sacrifice when you do stuff like this.
yeah. One final emotional question: how do you define success now versus then?
So, back when I was growing up and just back through a lot of my life. So I worked really hard to prove something. Like I wanted to prove something to other people. And I thought that there was going to come a day where I was going to hit this euphoric, like perfect place in life where I'd be able to kick my feet up like this, just up on the desk like that
I'm so glad we
and
caught that
just
on
put
video.
my hands back. Yeah, no, I thought there was gonna come a point where I'd be able to just put my hands
Yeah,
behind my back and just be like, I made it.
yeah,
The It's all complete, and that was success to me. And it was also having people that I knew in school or maybe somebody I worked with a long time ago or whatever messaging me and saying, "Oh, Mark, I was wrong to talk to you or treat you that way." And you know what? That doesn't happen. Like
yeah,
that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen at all. And I could elaborate so much on why that doesn't happen, but that's how I did define success. Now I define success as just when I feel fulfilled, when I just have that good feeling. It doesn't have to be about money or things or whatever. It has to be I leave our interview and I say, wow, that was a really great interview. And I feel really good about the energy and the conversation. Or I end an interview with somebody and I say, wow, that felt great. I love the connection that I made, and I feel fulfilled off of those things. It's not about proving to people how, they're wrong about me or whatever. I don't really think about that too much anymore. It's just what am I getting out of it? How am I being fulfilled? And what impact is it making on me as well as the other parties that I'm interacting with.
Yeah. You see, earlier on when I was preparing for this podcast, I saw your profile and everything. I was like, let's talk about podcast and all that. But the funny thing was like, no, I was like, you have a very peculiar story that a lot of persons who into their head who are doubting themselves and all that, they need to hear your story because I believe that it is by shining our light, give permission for others to shine theirs. And your story is a perfect example of what persons need to hear that sometimes we
Well, wisdom, as I have been doing this show more and more and just putting myself out there, it can be TikTok, it can be whatever. I have come to not only become more comfortable talking about some of these things, like the scary thing that I admitted, but I'm just realizing that, for example, there's a very pretty girl who does TikTok live every day, and they get tons of people. They'll have like 300 people, and they're giving her all kinds of gifts, and she's getting all kinds of traffic. And she'll sit there and she'll be like, I don't look good today, or I don't sound good today. Like she picks herself apart.
yeah.
And I sit there, I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you crazy? There's a couple people that will go on there and they'll like pick themselves apart, or they'll say, I don't like the way I sound, or whatever. And I see where I can make my impact. And that's why I do what I do. And because of what I've been learning from all of that, I've also been feeling more inspired to talk about these things on my show, on your show, and anywhere else I go. And
Where can listeners learn more about you?
so listeners can find me on LinkedIn at my name, Marc Schmidt, spelled M-A-R-C. They can also find me on YouTube. I have a channel, Mark My Words, and I believe the handle is Mark My Words 3008, which is very generic, but that's what they gave me. And I'm also on TikTok. I love talking about my journey. Now, my account is about music. The account name is Mark, M-A-R-C, Mark on Music. I talk a lot about my music collection and stuff like that, but I go live almost every day and I talk about way more than just, vinyl records. I talk about imposter syndrome. I talk about podcasting. I talk about my show. I talk about all kinds of things. So those are probably the best places to connect with me.
Thank you, Mark, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I thought this was a really fun episode. This is a great conversation. So I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom Journey, the podcast for content creators. If today's episode sparked ideas, subscribe and leave a review. Share it with a fellow creator who might benefit. Check the show notes for links and resources. If you'd like to support the show, buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/wisdomhq. Follow us on social media to stay connected. Until next time, keep creating and seeking wisdom in your journey.